balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. I am your host, Rick, and apparently Tommy is omnipresent everywhere. Or at least that's what she's saying over on Facebook. I know she likes to jump back and forth and, you know, sometimes slum with the kiddies over on Rumble. Anyway. Oh, my goodness. What a weekend. You know, I thought that it was actually going to be kind of a slow week in news. And then all of a sudden, last night, my mom is on the phone with Mrs. Whiskey. And, yeah, all of a sudden, I get this, hey, did you know that Hunter got pardoned? All right, let's be honest. That really wasn't any kind of a surprise. If you didn't see that one coming, you're freaking blind, baby. That's all I'm telling you right now. But there is some keys. There's some keys to that pardon that I'm going to go through with you tonight before we really get things going. All right, let's go ahead and kick that off. Tonight we're being led in the pledge by Pops McGroin and his partner. That's the best way I can say it. So Pops McGroin and his partner are going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you are of mine, please stand, remove your hat, if you're wearing one, like me, and place your hand over your heart and follow along with Pops and partner in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless America.
All right. Thank you very much, Pops McGroin and partner, for sending that in. I do appreciate that. If you would like to get your version of the Pledge of Allegiance played here on the program, all you need to do is record yourself performing the pledge in your style. And make sure that you take that audio or video file, whatever kind of file you have. I'll take care of it. I'll do whatever I need to with it, generally speaking. And just send it off to me. Attach it to an email and put in the to box, fans, FANS, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, FANS, at AmericanPerspective.online. And I will get you into the rotation. All right, for tonight's headline promo, we have True Grit Roots Network. TGRN.net is our place on the interweb for you to go and find out all about us. Go to TGRN.net and you can listen right in your browser. Or what you can also do is download our app, or if you already have the Live 365, iHeartRadio, or Odyssey, AUDACY apps already, you can find us in their catalog of digital radio stations. That's True Grit Roots Network with TGRN Blues is what you're going to be looking for. And don't forget, coming in January of 2025, TGRN Blues is making a slight programming change and turning into a blues rock channel. So we're going to add rock to our repertoire of the blues. So it'll hopefully appeal to a couple of more, a couple of different avenues of different people. And that is coming once again in January of 2025, headlined by a great upcoming artist, a blues rock icon is going to head that initiative up. So go and check us out at tgrn.net. That's True Grit Roots Network, TGRN, based out of Austin, Texas. All right. So, last night, well, it was not that not that far, in terms of my time, because remember, I'm on the West Coast, sometimes called the left coast, which I'm not left, okay? But everybody else is around here for the most part. I think my family lives in a small pocket where we're lucky. Anyway, moving on. We get the announcement that Joe Biden has pardoned Hunter Biden. This is not a surprise. Not a surprise at all. I mean, you kind of knew it was going to happen. I figured it would probably be like one of the last things that he would do on his way out the door. But he went ahead and pardoned him. But the key here, though, is how he pardoned him. So, for an example, okay, his pardon, which if you read it or you listen to when he make the statement of it or whatever other people are talking about it, he actually pardoned Hunter Biden for somewhere between 10 to 11 years worth. So from 2014 all the way up to essentially 2025 or 2024. And there's a reason for that, folks. Hunter Biden took the opportunity that was handed to him on a silver platter to sit on the Burisma board, the oil board in Ukraine, starting in 2014. It was actually April of 2014, roughly, that he went and joined the Burisma board. So the entire time from 2014 all the way up until now, where he has been acting as a foreign agent registration, okay, and doing those FARA violations, all right, that's what Joe pardoned him for. Joe pardoned him for anything and everything that happened in that period. Pretty much. He did essentially a completely blanket pardon. Now, one might have to ask, okay, wait a minute. Hunter was convicted or found guilty of, not necessarily convicted, but found guilty of tax evasion, 6 different counts, and also a gun charge. And it was those that if Joe was not attempting to cover up something else, okay, he would have only pardoned him for the things that he has been, quote unquote, found guilty of. But he didn't. He went beyond that, way beyond that. And so now what this essentially has done, first of all, again, it's not surprising. Totally not surprising. I mean, I expected it of him. You know, a lot of people would sit there and think that they have their, morals, standards, scruples. Even I have had conversations with my son, and I've made comments to him before and been like, hey, if you get into trouble with the police, you don't have to worry about the police coming after you. You have to worry about me coming after you. And honestly, I mean, that was just essentially more of a fear tactic. I can say it now because my son is an adult. If he gets into trouble now, it's his problem. But the thing about it is that what a lot of people don't understand is that Hunter Biden, and we know this because of all of the information that has been gleaned from the laptop that was supposedly Russian disinformation, according to 51 intelligence analysts. Yeah, lying analysts. And yes, I did say analyst on purpose. But the point here is that Hunter is now pardoned for everything that he did. Everything that he did for Burisma, doing the bag operations with China and the Russian paying into the family basically the entire influence peddling operation is all tied to Hunter Biden. Now, the interesting thing about this, or another interesting thing about this that I got to point out, is that, and I've got a clip of this, is that the entire family got together to discuss it, okay, over the weekend. So, obviously, this is an attempt, a complete attempt to cover up a whole bunch of crap, and to try and keep Joe Biden from being called, or when he gets out of office as well, because this way Hunter can just sit there and say things. He can't plead the fifth because he's been pardoned, because there's nothing for him to get incriminated for, but he may say a lot of I can't recalls if he's ever called to the stand to discuss it. Now, the thing that a lot of people are upset about, which nobody who knows Joe Biden really is upset about this, but everybody else who thinks that Joe, especially the mainstream media and several of the other sycophantic followers that were running around saying, oh, Joe, Joe says that he's not going to pardon Hunter, and Joe says that he trusts the rule of law, that he is, that essentially is, going to follow the law, and whatever happens to Hunter is what happens to Hunter. Yeah. Like these guys. This in the populist, dead wrong. Biden disappoints corporate media, pardons Hunter. And here's the list of lies that they told Americans. So here is, I'm not going to play the whole thing, but there's about 9 minutes worth on this thing. I'm only going to play a few minutes of it, or maybe about a minute and a half. But here it is. Biden says that he won't commute his son's sentence after conviction.
Presidential promise to put the law before family.
I said I abide by the jury decision. I will do that, and I will not pardon him.
Letting the world know that he will not wipe away the decision of 12 of his son's peers.
Was asked directly, and he has said he wouldn't pardon his son if he gets convicted.
Let's wait and see what happens if he loses.
Yeah, but he said it.
He's going to get pardoned by his dad. There's no question about that.
The president has ruled out pardoning his son.
Major commitment from the president, accepting the outcome of the trial and also pledging not to pardon his son.
So the challenge for him is really to continue to live up to his values when it was really personal, and he did that today.
It seems like a...
Yeah, he really lived up to his values. He didn't live up to his values. Well, actually, no, I take that back. He did live up to his values. His values of being a corrupt, I keep wanting to... corruptocrat. Anyway, we'll go with that. But, a corrupt president, a corrupt and morally questionable human being, for sure. All of those things. He lived up to it. He did. And I've said on this program, I fully expected this to happen. Like I said, I just didn't imagine that it would happen so soon. So, oligarch. Well, yeah, but that's not quite the word I was looking for there, G. I was looking for I keep wanting to say aristocrat, but it's not. It's aristocrat. Anyway, so yeah, these guys, they're just, they just sit there and, yeah, Sean Parnell made a comment today, and he's like, if it were my kid, I would definitely pardon him. And I kind of agree, I suppose. Although I don't know. It's just really, really difficult for me to question that. But as far as his whole particular situation here and scenario, I mean, yeah, if nobody saw this coming, Joe Biden's been a liar and a plagiarist and just this guy that, constantly has done nothing but lie his entire career. He was caught, and why he even ever got into the Oval Office is just amazing to me, because he was caught lying and plagiarizing back in his first couple of presidential runs. And, the short memory of the U.S. people, okay, just freaking amazes me. But, like I said, not surprising at all. All right. Now, of course, the left immediately jumped on this and was saying, things like, oh, well, this is expected. Congratulations, Joe. So on and so forth. And, yeah. Well, there's one person on CNN, actually, who has actually said the quiet part out loud with regards to the Hunter Biden pardon. And this is part of the reason why I'm sitting here telling you this was planned from the beginning. I mean, if you think about this, he was offered a sweet deal by David Weiss originally, if you recall. It was that plea deal that was just such a sweetheart deal that that even the judge looked at it and went, yeah, no. The judge turned it down, and the judge was like, no, there's no way, because it was one of those deals where it was, a completely blanket deal. It was like, hey, anything that that Hunter Biden does, he's going to be completely exonerated for. He has full immunity. And that was the first attempt that they did at trying to get Hunter Biden off. So when he finally went to trial for those couple of things and he ended up doing, he ended up getting convicted. Now Joe Biden got painted into a corner and has absolutely no recourse but to pardon Hunter in order to save what's left of his family. Well, here's a little bit of the story as to sort of how this went down and potentially the reasons behind why it went down. Take a listen.
We were told that this sort of came to a head this weekend, and this is why President Biden decided now to do this. But as Isaac was just saying, that really is a sense of the conversation that has been going on really inside the family. And I'm told this has been very much a family discussion and something that has been not widely shared or discussed as a policy matter inside the West Wing. But there was a worry of future prosecutions or future potential of what the incoming Trump Justice Department could do. So that, of course, is freighted in all of this as well. But for now, this moment, this certainly is a decision that President Biden, I'm guessing, did not come to easily. But as you played that statement before, so much has changed since June when he told David Muir of ABC News that he would not do that. Of course, his station in life has changed. He will not be a second-term president, did not complete his campaign. So that is why, sort of leading up to this, that's why I'm told a decision was reached finally this weekend after spending time together in Nantucket.
Yeah, and he said he didn't want to delay it further.
So here's the thing. Okay, and I don't know if you guys caught it there, but as you know, it's been a discussion within the family for a very long time. And also, too, that it's the potential of Donald Trump getting in, and the potential of future charges being brought to him. That's the key. And that's the part that nobody wanted to say out loud. Now, there are some people, by the way, that are on the left that are saying, this is ridiculous. Don't do this, or this is, shouldn't have done it. But far left governor, Colorado Governor Jared Polis posted on X, while as a father, I certainly understand President Joe Biden's natural desire to help his son by pardoning him. I am disappointed that he put his family ahead of the country. Yeah. So he continues with, this is a bad precedent that could be abused by later presidents and will sadly tarnish his reputation. Yeah, his reputation was gone, dude, a long time ago. But yeah, he this is just again totally expected. Everybody knew this was coming. They just knew. They knew it was coming. They knew, I mean, anybody with a brain knew this was coming. It's just, none of this should be really surprised. What is interesting, though, is whether or not Adam Schiff, Shifty Schiff, you know, good old shifter, lying, censured moron himself. Apparently, I wonder what he is going to do in terms of changing his tune, because he, back in 2018, made a comment about pardoning a president's son could be tantamount to obstruction. That's right. This was back in 2018. Take a listen.
So the president's pardon of Scooter Libby, Congressman, has inspired you to propose new legislation. What exactly would it do?
What it would do is say that in the event the president pardons anyone in an investigation in which the president is a witness, a subject, or the target, those investigative files will all be turned over to the Congress. The Congress ought to know whether the president is using the pardon power to obstruct justice. The American people have a right to know. I think it is clearly constitutional. It doesn't prohibit him from granting a pardon, even a pardon he shouldn't grant. But it does say that we will be able to at least find out whether the president is using this power to shield himself from liability.
It offers transparency at the very least.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Congressman. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Don.
I wonder if Shifty Schiff is going to be in the same boat now that the president has pardoned his son. Now, you'll notice he introduced legislation that would have fit this particular scenario completely, to the point where this is definitely would be a challenge or a problem with this entire kind of scenario. So, yeah. I doubt that Shifty Schiff will remember this. He'll forget, or he'll weasel his way out of it if he was ever called on it. But the key, of course, is right here where he says, and let me see if I can zoom that in. Right here, he said, when he was talking about the bill, what it would do is to say that in the event the president pardons anyone in an investigation in which the president is a witness, subject, or target, those investigative files will all be turned over to Congress. So, considering that Joe Biden is the target of these investigations, he is a subject in these investigations. Yeah. So, I don't think Schiff really would understand. I mean, again, the left, they constantly do things. They try to tell you that, hey, we're on the up and up and so on and so forth. And yet, what do? They propose stuff, and then that, of course, could get turned around and weaponized on them. Because, again, the left doesn't think forward. They don't think ahead. They only think of what's right in front of them. So, yeah. So it was, again, that legislation was, of course, proposed because it was 2018. It was proposed to be targeted toward Donald Trump and his family at that moment. at that particular point in time. So I wonder how he would feel about that. So, yeah. Anyway, well, Donald Trump, of course, shortly after he heard about this, and keep in mind, too, that Donald Trump actually predicted that Joe Biden was going to pardon Hunter. He predicted it. So, once again, Donald Trump is right. But that being said, he immediately asked about the J6 hostages, is what he called. And he called it such an abuse. So Trump wrote on Truth Social, does the pardon given by Joe to Hunter include the J6 hostages who have now been in prison for years? Trump wrote, such an abuse and miscarriage of justice. So the Trump transition team also reacted to the pardon of Hunter Biden. The failed witch hunts against President Trump have proven that the Democrat-controlled DOJ and other radical prosecutors are guilty of weaponizing the justice system. This was Trump's incoming White House communications chief, Stephen Chung, and he said in a statement to Fox News, he continued and said, that system of justice must be fixed and due process must be restored for all Americans, which is exactly what President Trump will do as he returns to the White House with an overwhelming mandate from the American people. Now, Biden did accuse, during his statement, he did accuse Republicans of unfair treatment and claimed that Hunter was being treated differently by prosecutors. Yeah, Hunter was being treated differently by prosecutors. I agree. He was being handled with kid gloves because nothing ever came about of his FARA violations. He even admitted in testimony that he was working with foreign entities and lobbying on their behalf. And yet not a single FARA violation was even tossed out. Not a single one was tossed out as a charge. And so, yes, absolutely, you are correct, Joe. Hunter was being treated differently. He was being treated differently because he was your son, and you were protecting him because he was the bag man for your entire Biden crime family. That's the way you worked things. That's the way you worked things. Now, as part of his statement, the president said, from the day I took office, I said I would not interfere with the Justice Department's decision-making. Side note, that is a bunch of bullshit. You have used the Justice Department to go after your opponents. Anyway, and then he continues on and he says, and I kept my word even as I have watched my son being selectively and unfairly prosecuted. You mean like Donald Trump has been over the course of the last, year or whatever? Anyway. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, again, this is nothing unusual, nothing surprising, nothing at all in terms of anyone who was paying attention for any particular reason at all whatsoever. Well, the other big news that came out, and actually I talked about this briefly on, I believe it was Saturday night, is the fact that Kash Patel has been tapped to be the director of the FBI. Now, a lot of people may not know who Kash Patel is. Kash Patel worked under Devin Nunes in a couple of different places. He worked with Devin Nunes in a couple of different places. He also was instrumental in several different cases, which of course the left isn't even going to bother mentioning, but he's received several commendations and awards for the investigative work that he has done in terms of directly dealing with some terrorism in recent years. He is just I would consider it a fantastic pick for what's going on out there. And just the mere fact that the left is screaming and hollering about him is just enough of a thumbs up for me, to be honest with you. But before I get into the rest of cash, let's talk about cash. Let's talk about saving 50% off at theflagshirt.com. Cyber Monday, which is today, folks. Today, it's ending site-wide, 50% off on most, not all, but most of their site. You go there now. Go to theflagshirt.com. Just open up another tab in your browser. I know you guys are watching, me on the Rumble, hopefully maybe even the Rumble app. But what you can do is open up your browser and go to theflagshirt.com. That's theflagshirt.com. And you can peruse their site of fantastic patriotic clothing, like the shirts that I'm wearing. This one right here is available as well. But you can get 50% off on Cyber Monday only today only, site-wide. All you have to do is use the code UNITE2024. That's UNITE 2024 at checkout, and you'll get 50% off site-wide. There are some exclusions, I'm not going to deny that, but for the most part, you'll get 50% off. And if you order $75 or more, they will give you free shipping. They will give you free shipping from theflagshirt.com. Theflagshirt.com is a great patriotic company. They have men's, women's, children's. They have a whole bunch of accessories and things like that. It's a veteran-owned, veteran-run organization as well. So head on over to theflagshirt.com and use code UNITE2024 today to get 50% off site-wide. That's UNITE2024 at checkout to get 50% off site-wide for Cyber Monday. Head on over to theflagshirt.com and get yourself patriotized. All right. So let's see. Kash Patel. Well, there's a problem. Not really much of a problem, but there is a bit of a problem for Kash Patel. And what the problem for Kash, outside of just getting confirmed by the Senate, which is a hurdle that pretty much anybody is going to have to go through, we also have this issue with Christopher Wray. Christopher Wray apparently has a 10-year contract, because he was selected at one point, he has 10 years to serve. And so he essentially, in order for Kash to get the position, Wray either has to resign or Trump has to fire him. And, sorry, my camera just died for some reason. Don't know why. Looks like it might have overheated. Is it working now? Let's see. I do not like when this happens. There we go. I don't know what happened. It either overheated or something. But anyway. All right. Yeah, my camera froze on me. But there we go. Okay. So Kash has to get confirmed, but only for and he won't be able to be used for like a vacancy appointment. So because there's no vacancy, so what they have to do then is not Jake Sullivan, but Wray has to either resign or get fired. Now, the firing part is, I'm sure Trump is like all ready for it because hell, he's been practicing that for a long time on The Apprentice. But there are some that want Christopher Wray to complete his term, one of them being Jake Sullivan. So this in the Washington Examiner, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said FBI Director Christopher Wray should finish the remainder of his term, as President-elect Donald Trump said he is nominating Kash Patel for the role. Now, Wray was originally a Trump appointee President Joe Biden did not remove, and he has 3 years left to serve on his 10-year term. Sullivan said that while he would not respond directly to Patel's nomination, the Biden administration prefers that Wray finish his term to follow precedent. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to happen, to be honest. He was speaking to CNN's State of the Union on the same day that Kash was announced, and Sullivan again emphasized the longstanding tradition of keeping the FBI politically neutral while having FBI directors serve their full 10-year terms. Now, that 10-year term, by the way, came after Hoover, which is the FBI's building, the J. Edgar Hoover building. For those that don't know history, J. Edgar Hoover was the founder and he ran the FBI for close to 48 years. Okay. And so what ended up happening is because he ran it for 48 years, they decided to put a quote unquote term limit on the FBI director. And so they set it up to where the nomination actually runs for 10 years. Well, obviously, Wray has 3 years left on his particular term, and even though he was a Trump appointee back then, he hasn't done anything for FBI. He's turned it into and weaponized it as basically a demonstration that he is likely a piece of what's called the deep state, which is essentially the bureaucracy that bows to its Democrat masters. So Wray also was in an interview with NBC News this last spring and suggested during that interview that he'd like to stay in his job if Trump won, as long as the FBI can maintain its longstanding standards of not bringing politics into its investigations. Now, one of the things that Patel wants to do almost immediately, he's already said this, is that he would close up the Hoover building and he would basically kick everybody in the FBI out of D.C. He would take and turn the building over into he called it a deep state museum, but it would basically just go and become a museum, a monument for the FBI, and possibly even open it up to the public, I guess. But they would essentially, Kash would essentially tell all of the investigators, he'd close down all of the intelligence divisions, because again, they're kind of crossing over such agencies as the NSA or the CIA in terms of intelligence gathering. And he would return the FBI, in his words, return the FBI to its crime fighting roots, which is essentially going after the criminals, the sex offenders, any of these other particular interesting individuals that you can do on a federal level. And he would turn it back into its original crime fighting roots where it came from. And so that is sort of why the left is a little scared about this, because now you don't have an agency anymore that can be weaponized or is affected by the DC, again, that swamp, that deep DC swamp that has developed, a bureaucratic swamp that's down there. And so anyway, that's one of the reasons why they sort of want Christopher Wray to hang around, because Christopher Wray is not planning on tearing apart the FBI and turning it back into its criminal, the reason for its existence, by the way. It was created in order to combat organized crime, and it was the organized crime crime fighting ability that created things like the RICO Act, which the racketeering and that kind of stuff, where they tried to get, because they couldn't get the criminal organizations on things like, murder or drug trafficking or any of those other entities. They want to get, they went after them for RICO charges. And of course, too, they would go after them for tax evasion and things of that nature because they couldn't get them on any other charges. But that was the real reason why the FBI was actually created. Well, Jake Sullivan isn't the only one who is not happy about the fact that Patel has been nominated. In fact, he went on CNN and kind of made himself, he sort of demonstrated how stupid he actually is with regards to things like the deep state. But here you can take a listen to this, where he was one-on-one with the host here on CNN. So let's go ahead and take a listen. Hate it when this does this. Hold on. Gotta refresh the page. Here we go.
That Donald Trump intends to nominate Kash Patel to be the FBI director, which of course implies that he's going to fire the sitting FBI director, Christopher Wray. What is your reaction? What are the implications?
Well, Christopher Wray, of course, is a Republican, appointed by a Republican, as he has said, but apparently has demonstrated too much the independence and objectivity in the job for Donald Trump, who wants much more of a personal loyalist in the position, and that's why he's gone to Kash Patel.
Do you think there are any issues inside the FBI around politicization, as many who voted for Donald Trump seem to say?
Well, undoubtedly, if you look at it historically, for example, during the COINTELPRO period, the FBI really was weaponized against Dr. King and the civil rights movement and the peace movement. There was, decades of the FBI being basically used as a political instrument. There's an interesting book about that, about J. Edgar Hoover by Beverly Gage, and people can look at. And so I haven't seen what the proof is that the FBI has been weaponized against a political party or the Department of Justice. Of course, this Department of Justice has brought charges against a Democratic U.S. Senator in New Jersey, a Democratic congressman in Texas. And so some people just seem to think that it should go only in one direction. And if it doesn't, then somehow it's politicized. And I think that's what they mean when they talk about politicization in the deep state. The deep state, nobody's ever defined it. Apparently, it just means anybody who doesn't do the will of Donald Trump. No. It's anyone who has been in their job in the bureaucracy. Yeah. Look, Jamie Raskin, I'm telling you, by the way, he's been nominated to be the head of he's going for being the head of some committee or whatever. I don't know. He announced it on X. I have no idea what he's going for. But anyway, this guy is a complete and utter moron. There is absolutely no doubt in anyone's mind who's been paying attention that the FBI itself has been weaponized against conservatives. Hello, they ranked Christian churches or Catholic churches that were Latin masses as being domestic violent extremists. They have labeled Moms for Liberty DVEs. They have denied the Hunter Biden laptop even existed for any of that. This guy is just trying to make excuses for what has been obvious to anyone with a brain, realistically, about the entire thing with Kash Patel. And so, he thinks that he's looking for a loyalist. No, Donald Trump is looking for someone who has the balls, and yes, is a loyalist, but someone who has the balls to actually take on
what is the deep state bureaucracy that has infested, or yes, infested is a good word, infested our government. Because let's face it, we only have a short period of time in order to eradicate these people like ticks. We only have a short period of time to eradicate them and get them out, pull them out, in order to get things back on track. And by us sitting here, but Raskin isn't the only one who is having a conniption over this. Disgraced former FBI official Andrew McCabe threw a fit about it on CNN. And then John Bolton, of course, lost his mind trying to compare Patel to one of Joseph Stalin's chiefs of police, of the secret police. Nate Sullivan, of course, humorously claimed that Joe Biden kept the FBI insulated from politics. Yeah, no. So, ultimately, all of these people are attacking Kash Patel. Well, that is exactly why Kash Patel should be the man on the path for it, the nomination, that he got it right. Donald Trump got it right. And so anyway, the question now is going to be not so much, now that he's nominated, the question is, can he get beyond the Senate confirmation process? Well, one senator from Texas, Senator Ted Cruz, believes that is going to be the case. So Ted Cruz was on Sunday's CBS's Face the Nation, and he said that Kash Patel was a very strong nominee and will likely be confirmed by the Senate. So here, Cruz says, listen, I think Kash Patel is a very strong nominee. I think the entire slate of cabinet nominees President Trump has put forward is very strong. I believe every one of those cabinet nominees is going to be confirmed by the Senate. I think Kash Patel is going to be confirmed by the Senate. You look at his background. He has a serious professional background. He was a prosecutor. He was a public defender. He was a senior intelligence staffer on Capitol Hill. He was a senior intelligence staffer at the White House. He was chief of staff of the Department of Defense. He was the deputy director of national intelligence. And I got to say, all of the weeping and gnashing of teeth, all of the people pulling their hair out, are exactly the people who are dismayed at having a real reformer come into the FBI and clean out the corrupted partisans who sadly have burrowed into senior career positions at the FBI. The FBI and the Department of Justice are two institutions incredibly important to the rule of law in the United States. I revere both. And one of the most tragic consequences of 4 years of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is both the DOJ and the FBI have been politicized and weaponized. And I think Kash Patel is a very strong nominee to take on the partisan corruption in the FBI. And that is, that was his statement on that. Now, the question followed up with regarding the Christopher Wray, and Cruz basically said that he thinks he will either resign, which we know he won't, or that President Trump will fire him. Cruz continued and said, but it's no secret to anybody, including Chris Wray, that he is not going to continue to serve as the head of the FBI under Donald Trump. So, yeah. There's more to it, but there you go. So, yeah. Oh, folks, the more that the left get upset about the nominees, even the sub nominees, the ones that are like below the main characters, I think that these people are just, well, They're just upset because they know that their days are numbered and that the walls are starting to close in proverbially for their long time running scenario. All right. So a couple more things, short ones here on the palette or on the plate for tonight. First of all, you remember that there was a ceasefire. I talked about this last week. There was a ceasefire announced by Israel and Hezbollah in terms of and of course, Joe Biden took credit for it. Even though Joe Biden didn't negotiate it, it was one of his underlings, for sure, that assisted the negotiation. But there's been several questions as to whether or not the ceasefire actually would have happened had it not been for Trump coming into office. Now, the suggestion by most people who are at least somewhat cognizant of what is going on over in the Middle East and with all of the things that are occurring now in reference to preparation to Trump coming back into office on January 20th, one of the things that has been floated is that there's a reason why it's a 60-day ceasefire. At the time that it was signed, we were only 50 some odd days, almost 60 days, out from the inauguration of Donald Trump. And so this, some believe this to be a strategic move by Israel to make it so that they can get the embargo that the Biden administration has placed on weapons going over to Israel lifted by Donald Trump so that they can actually go and complete their mission, which is to get rid of Hamas, Hezbollah, not so much the Houthis, but the Houthis are still a danger, and maybe eventually head on over and get rid of the bankroller for all of it, which is, of course, Iran. Now, a lot of people who have been talking about this have not recognized or have been, praising Joe Biden over this. Well, one person has literally said the quiet part out loud with this. So there's a gentleman by the name of James Stavridis, I guess, is how it's pronounced, I believe. And he is the NATO Supreme Allied Commander. Well, this NATO Supreme Allied Commander basically stated it by saying this: Hezbollah's willingness to cease fire against Israel is a, quote, direct result of President-elect Donald Trump's impending return to the White House. Stavridis, God, that's a hard name to say. Stavridis told Sunday's The Cats Roundtable, and this is it here in Newsmax. He told Sunday's The Cats Roundtable on WABC 770 AM in New York, "You're seeing Hezbollah willing to go to a ceasefire. I think that's a direct result of the presence of a new Trump administration coming on." Now, Trump has made comments along the way with his campaign in terms of Joe Biden's weakness and Iran appeasement, making America more weak on the world stage, and the world itself less stable as wars rage in Ukraine and the Middle East. And now the world is holding its collective breath for Trump. This is according to Stavridis. Also, he told the host, John Katsimatidis. Wow. Okay, that's why it's called the Cats Roundtable. Anyway, Stavridis said, in many capitals around the world, The leaders are holding their breath, just unsure of what's coming. Notably, Iran is very vulnerable now, he added. Uncertainty of Trump has given pause to the rival world powers, but it can be concerning for allies also, including NATO, he did say. He said that if that is used as a negotiating ploy, as a way to keep an opponent off balance, it works out pretty well. When it's used with our allies and partners and friends like the NATO alliance, it can have consequences that are less good. So Trump has also placed Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, as the envoy for Russia and Ukraine to negotiate peace and keep Russia at bay against NATO, while former Arkansas governor has been tapped to be the U.S. ambassador to Israel and who is slated to help settle tensions in the Middle East, if not at all end the talk of a Palestinian state in Gaza that has proved to be a haven for terrorist activity against Israel for decades. So it's not just us in the conservative movement that are happy or wanting Trump to come back. You can see the positive movement everywhere. You can see the positive movement, everybody just feels like there has been an incredible weight lifted from the world, an oppressive weight lifted off the world's shoulders with the election of Donald Trump. Now, one of the problems, though, that we could be looking at, unfortunately, is the enactment and subsequent action by the Supreme Court. There is a suggestion here in the Washington Examiner that Trump's war on federal bureaucracy could trigger some Supreme Court battles. Now, Donald Trump and his advisors have long cited what's called impoundment, which is a legal theory, basically, where it essentially means that the president, even though Congress has funded something, that the president can determine whether or not what the Congress has put forth is actually constitutional or not. And so the Constitution grants Congress sole authority to appropriate the federal budget. But the impoundment theory, and again, it's a legal theory, essentially claims that any president has unilateral ability or authority to ignore Congress's funding bills and to withhold or impound funds meant for programs, agencies, or departments deemed unsuitable by the White House. So here, and honestly, it's been a theory that's been floated quite a bit, to be honest with you. But the thing about it is that Congress passed legislation during the Nixon administration that required the president to spend funds appropriated by Congress. Now, this is kind of an interesting constitutional thought and breakdown in the fact that there isn't any, they're supposed to be co-equal branches, with the president and the Congress being the most powerful of the three, and the Supreme Court being the one that's kind of the referee in the middle. So the question is going to be whether or not the president absolutely has to enforce the law as written, or whether or not the president can actually say, well, this one seems to be unconstitutional per the 10th Amendment, and kick it back to Congress, as an example. It's going to be very interesting to watch and to see what happens in the next year or two in terms of everything that is going on. And Ms. T of Texas, she calls it out, but they are all supposed to answer to we the people. You are correct. They are. They're supposed to. They don't, but they're supposed to. Anyway, it's going to be kind of interesting to see what happens because like I said on Saturday, and I'll say it again tonight, this Trump presidency, his coming into office and the Congress being brought in where it's all Republicans in charge or in the majority, even however slight, however minor, this is going to be a master class in constitutionalism and our federalism. All right, folks, that is it for me for this evening. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It is free. And once you are there and signed in, search up the American Perspective channel. Make sure you hit that green follow button to be sure that you get notified every time I go live. Also, too, before you take off, make sure you hit those like buttons, those thumbs up buttons, those all buttons on all of my platforms, whether it be X, YouTube, Facebook, and, of course, on Rumble. We will see you tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Have a great rest of your evening, and good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.